Hi, I'm Angela. Welcome to my video. I used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses and I left over 30 years ago. And in this video, I just want to share my story. I've thought about whether I should share my story for a long time, but recently I've been convinced that that's the right thing to do because I've seen so many people on YouTube coming out, sharing their story, sharing their experiences, and it's really encouraged me and it's really helped me. So I thought that if I could share my story and it helps somebody, then it has to be a good thing. So I am gonna I've got my notes here, and I'm just gonna go through my story and my background. So my name's Angela, and I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I was what people call a born in. My parents both got the truth, as they say, from when they were in the Caribbean, and they were baptized as young people and married. They met before becoming Jehovah's Witnesses. So they met, had a relationship, then started studying. My mother started studying first, then my father started studying, and then they decided to get baptized and then get married. And then a few years later, they added to their family, moved to England, and I was born. I'm the youngest of their children, and my parents raised their children as Jehovah's Witnesses. So all my brothers and sisters were raised as witnesses, used to go to the Kingdom Hall and all that involved. And over the years, my father stopped going. He was never disfellowshipped, but he just stopped going. He didn't believe that it was the truth, as they call it. He didn't believe it. So he stopped going, but my father never discouraged my mother from going. My father was a very reasonable man, and he said, if you want to continue, then it's entirely up to you, and it's up to the children if they want to go. So over the years, my brothers and sisters, they all stopped going one by one, and one of my earliest memories is that it was just me and my mother who were going to meetings. Now, because my father had stopped going, the witnesses in the congregation they didn't shun my mother or my father as such, but they were very cool with them. It was kind of almost like, and we're talking now back in the late 60s, early 70s. We're going back a few years. It was, I suppose, as the witnesses, they have labels for people, and they would label my mother as spiritually weak. So although my mother continued going, she was often looked down upon because her children didn't go, all my other brothers and sisters didn't go, and my dad, her husband, had stopped going. So she was always like seen as a little bit weak, and my mother felt it, and she used to always say that the witnesses and the congregation, were not loving. They always talked about we're loving, and this God Jehovah is loving, and all of that, but it was just not something that she felt. But we carried on going, and as I started growing up, as they say, you have to make the truth your own, and I decided to do that. But as I was growing up and I started going to secondary school, met other people who were in my congregation in the local area, and we would hang out and associate, but then there was always the encouragement from the elders that I shouldn't be associating with other people that were not Jehovah's Witnesses. So although my mother again wasn't particularly fervent in her beliefs. She was always a little bit guarded, so there was a couple of witnesses that she would allow me to associate with, but even so, the association was very limited. Um, and as far as my friends at school, she just wasn't really happy and comfortable that I have any associations outside of the witnesses. But again, she wasn't particularly adamant on that. She didn't follow what the Jehovah's Witnesses had said 100%, because I suppose in her wisdom she could see there was a lot of hypocrisy in the congregation and amongst the witnesses. So but even so, we didn't celebrate Christmas and birthdays and Easter and all of that. There was none of that. So I did grow up feeling very deprived. But then as I got older, my mother stopped going. There was a period where she stopped going, and this was because she had and I can always remember my father wanted to go to the memorial, and me and my mother and my father, I'll always remember it, the three of us went to the memorial, and the elders acted totally disgracefully. And bearing in mind my father was never disfellowshipped, he just stopped going. My father went to the Kingdom Hall for the memorial, and he was completely shunned. And my dad was really upset by that, and my mum. And I was probably about 14 at the time, and I didn't really understand what had happened and what was going on. And when I got home, my mum explained that my dad was upset because he was making an effort to go to the Kingdom Hall for the memorial, and the whole community should be welcomed at this event. And the elders, or one elder in particular, he was the presiding overseer, walked up to my father, saw him, gave him a really bad look, and just turned his back on him. So my father looked at that and he was just like, you know what, I don't encourage you to continue. But by this time I'd already started that indoctrination from when I was little, was already taking hold. So my mother, for a while, she stopped going because that really discouraged her. But I continued going, and I can remember being about 14 or 15, and going to the meetings on my own. And my mother contacted one of the sisters who lived around the corner and said, could you just make sure that Angela gets to the meetings okay, and that when she's walking back at night that she's okay. And well, the sister was lovely, and she used to always do that, always walk me home, and make sure I got in safely at night. So with that level of support, I continued going to the Kingdom Hall, and I was the only one in my family. All my brothers, my sisters, my parents, they'd stopped going, but I continued. And I was like really taken in, really on the wave of indoctrination, and really believing everything that they were saying. Because my family wasn't strong or didn't go, I always felt a little bit left out. So some of the elders, they would have their children and their families, and they would invite over others who were strong to gatherings and stuff like that, but I was never invited. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm the sort of person who, if you say it can't be done, I will go out of my way to prove that it can be done. And I've experienced that so many times in my life. So when I experienced this kind of, being left out, for me, it was kind of like, you know what, I'm just as strong as you, and I'm going to prove my faith. So I was on this journey to proving that I'm just as good at Jehovah's Witness as anybody else. So I started, say, continued going to the meetings, really studying, really taking on the indoctrination, and as they say, making the truth your own. So when I left school, I started. I really had been indoctrinated at this point, believing that there was no career that is suitable for a good, strong Jehovah's Witness. There's no career out there that's going to, be of any benefit to you. And the only thing you need to do is to be a pioneer. So I left school at 16, and that summer, so I left school in the May, and at the assembly in July, I got baptized. My mother came along. Nobody else in my family came along, but my mother came along, and I got baptized. And after that point, my mother, started going back to the meetings, and so I got baptized, and then straight away I became a full-time pioneer, and I pioneered right up until the day I decided I'm leaving the organisation. So I look back now. And it fills me with such sadness to think that I had given all the years where I could have been in education, getting myself a good job, and building myself a career. I gave all of that to some concept, really, that hold no water. So I became a pioneer, and I was doing 90 hours every month out in the field, and doing what I thought, what I'd been taught, what I'd been indoctrinated to believe was the only career available for that had any value. So I did that for many years. Now, over the years, I saw many things happening within the congregation that really made me start to question, that would plant a tiny little seed in my mind, and those things eventually just robbed me of my joy, as they say, and that is what made me leave the organisation. And there were a number of things. It wasn't just one thing. Now, I wasn't disfellowshipped, I wasn't reproved, wasn't in trouble or anything like that. But I saw a lot of hypocrisy, and that really, for me, started to make me question the beliefs and the teachings as I got older. Bearing in mind, when you're young, as say, I grew up, as it from a young child, 8, 10, 12, 15, and when you're exposed to a teaching and you're exposed to something that's the only thing that is what you believe. That is what you believe, because you have no other life experience. And why shouldn't you believe it? Because everything that I had seen, all the people I knew, were witnesses. So I believed it, and that's what I followed. But as I started to get older and become wiser, I could start to see the level of hypocrisy within the organisation. So over time, I started to see some hypocrisy with the teachings, and started to think about things myself. And as I started to think and see things for myself, started to question, well, how can this be? How could it be? So, for example, I'm what I would call spiritually heightened. So I would never say that I'm a psychic or clairvoyant or anything like that, but I do have this heightened awareness of spiritual things happening around me. And I've had that from, from a teenager. And I remember talking to, Jehovah's Witnesses about it. And their response was, well, if you're experiencing spiritual things around you, then it's got to be Satan the devil. It's demonic. You must have been involved in some demonic activity or at some point. And it was these ridiculous thoughts and comments that I was receiving. So I would have this heightened spiritual sense about me. And some people might just call it intuition, some people might call it foresight, call it what you want, but I would have this heightened spiritual thing around me. I would hear things that nobody else could hear. I could sense things that other people couldn't sense. And again, I was told, well, that's demonic. And I used to say, well, surely not everything that somebody experiences that is spiritual is demonic. Surely it can't be. And they would always argue, well, yes, it is. And I would say, well, hold on, Jesus is a spirit. If you're going to believe in Jesus, and the jury is out for me on that one, but if you believe in Jesus, if you believe in God, and the angels, they're all spirits. So why can't you make the assumption that spiritual activity around an individual could also be from a good source? Why do you have to assume that it's from a negative source? So there was things like that would really start making me question what the witnesses were teaching. And then there was other personal things. So for example, I would be bored out of my mind with my life as a Jehovah's Witness, because it got to the point where I was getting up, going out on the ministry, being a full-time pioneer. Then I would go and do my small part-time job, and then come back home. I would be studying, getting ready for meetings, and then the cycle would happen again. And over time, my life just became so dull and boring. And I remember sitting and thinking, surely there has to be more to this than just going out in field service and going to meetings and studying. There has to be more. And in my particular congregation, we weren't a congregation, and I know different congregations are different, but there was just no activities for young people, for youngsters, for teenagers, for young adults. There was just nothing. And when somebody did try to organise something, it was frowned upon by the elders. So I got to a point where, as young people, you need to have a social outlet, and there was nothing. And I was just on this treadmill, and that just was totally contrary to my personality. But in 1989, I had the opportunity to go out to the Caribbean for a month and a half. And I went out there to visit family and friends and to have a holiday. And when I was out there, I saw how the witnesses were completely different to my congregation. And after meetings, they'd all go down the beach, they would hang out, and there was a real balance. They were having fun. And I got back home to England, and I was like, well, surely it's now a personal thing. There's nothing that says you can't have fun. Why can't we as young people have fun? And again, the elders really looked down. They frowned upon it. So for me, that really was something that made me unhappy as a woman, as a young woman, as a witness growing up. But so I suppose over time I just lost my joy. I lost my joy. You know, the witnesses were always saying that, you know, God's organization is, you know, a loving place, it's a kind place. Um, but the one thing that they failed to talk about, especially for young people and children, is that it's, you know, where's the fun? Where's the fun? There were no celebrating of birthdays, Christmas, Easter, anniversaries, nothing. There was, you couldn't celebrate that. All of that was forbidden, and the only thing that was celebrated was the memorial. And the memorial I found to be the most depressing event ever known to man. It's solemn, it's depressing, there was just nothing. So all of that, I just thought, well, you know, if God is a God of love, he wants us to have fun, he wants us to have a good time. There was none of that. So when I was then about 20, I left home for no reason other than I wanted to be independent. My parents were fantastic, and they were loving, kind, and very supportive parents, but I wanted to be independent. All my brothers and sisters by this time had left home, and I thought, right, it's time for me to stand on my own 2 feet. So I moved out and I got my own home, my own flat. And when the elders got wind of this, it was really frowned upon. Really frowned upon. It was, you know, here we are, we've got a sister, she's a pioneer. I was single and she's left home and now she's got her own home. What is she up to? What is she doing? So they were very subtle about it, and they would team me up with a young elder's wife. And this young elder's wife would all of a sudden be wanting to go out in the ministry with me, inviting me around to their home. And basically, they were trying to drill me to find out why I'd left home, what was going on, what was I up to, you know. And there was nothing. There was nothing. You know, I just wanted my independence. But I saw that as a way of escaping. I saw it as a way of escaping. So after I'd lived on my own for a year, I'd been pioneering, still pioneering, holding down a small part-time job, still going to meetings and studying, etc., etc. I decided that the only way that I'm going to leave the witnesses and make a clean break was to move congregations. So what I did is I gave up my flat and I went to live with my sister. And my sister hadn't been a witness for many, many, many years. So at this point, they probably didn't. They didn't know how to contact her or anything like that. So I left. I went to live with her, and she lived in a different part of the city. So I was now under a new congregation. So I made an appearance at this new congregation a couple of times, and then decided, well, nobody really knows me. I suppose in one sense people knew me because, you know, at assemblies I was on the platform, I was in, you know, had little parts and giving experiences at the assemblies and conventions. So from that perspective they knew me, but they didn't know me as a, you know, person in the congregation. So I decided, actually, this is my way of escaping the organisation. So I moved in with my sister, and then I moved to congregation, made an appearance at one or two because I did feel guilty, and then I just made the decision one day, this isn't the truth. This is a man-made organisation. This is all about conformity. It's all about mind control. It's got absolutely nothing to do with God, and I want nothing to do with it. So after 22 years of growing up, after being born in, growing up, being a witness, being a faithful servant of Jehovah, or rather of this organization, of this concept, I decided enough is enough. I'm going to be free. I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to have anybody control me and my thoughts and my actions and my career and what I want to do. So so I, decided to leave. And when the elders, having, contacted each other, from the two different congregations, heard that I'd stopped going, tried desperately to contact me, and tried to arrange to meet with me. And I, at that point, thought, no, you have no control over me. I'd seen how the witnesses had tried to control other people, and I thought, no, that's not going to happen to me. So I just refused to meet with them. And and I decided I'm gonna go. So, but during the time that, in my last couple of years as a witness, one of my other sisters was contacted by the witnesses, and she started studying, and she's now baptized, and she's a witness, and so is her family. And over the years, she's tried to convince me to go back. And I'm like, no, there's absolutely no way that I'm going to allow myself to be controlled. So, but in saying that, it's taken me over 30 years to decode. I was indoctrinated heavily for over 20 years, and it's taken 30 years and more to decode. And the indoctrination is so intensive, it's so strong, that even up until recently, some of my decisions were still based in that indoctrination. And so, for example, for the first 5-6 years that I'd stopped going, I couldn't even celebrate Christmas or birthdays, because there was the guilt that was surrounding that. I couldn't even go into a church without feeling really bad, really guilty that I'm part of Christendom and all the rest of it. There were so many things that I have had to decode from, and I'm still decoding. And that's why I'm making this video. One, as therapy for myself to decode, but also to help others to decode too. And I'm just so thankful to the ex-Jehovah Witness community on the internet, on YouTube particularly, and to activists who are doing such a fantastic job in helping people wake up. Because the interesting thing was, even though I had stopped going and had started waking up and started decoding, I couldn't always quite put my finger on why it was that the Jehovah's Witnesses were a false religion, that they were doing something wrong. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. All I know was that I'd got to a point, it didn't feel right, but I couldn't quite articulate to people who asked me what was so wrong with the Jehovah's Witnesses. I couldn't articulate it, but thanks to so many of the activists now on YouTube, it's really helped me to understand why things didn't feel right for me. So yeah, so I mean, now after I left the witnesses, it took me years to say, and I'm still decoding, but it took me a while to really find myself and find who I am and discover what I want out of my life. And it was a really strange feeling to be able to have that level of control without somebody saying, you need to get up at this time, you need to go out in the ministry for this time, you need to be out in service at this time, you need to have so many book studies and Bible studies, you need to go to this meeting and that meeting, you need to go here and you need to go there, you need to think like this and act like this, you need to wear this and wear that and not wear that. It was just so strange for me to not have somebody pulling my strings, and I'm still working through that. So since leaving the witnesses, and decoding, I've been able to shape the career that I want without feeling guilt. So I've went to uni, I graduated, developed a career in the field of human resource management, personal training and development. I've held senior positions. I've worked as a TV presenter for 7 years. I now run my own business as a author, a writer, a coach, a mentor, and I work and help people, inspiring them and supporting them to achieve whatever it is they want, to help them break free of any form of control and help them to spread their wings and fly, basically. And that, in doing that, that's really helped me, to see people achieve their dreams without any restrictions. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. Do I regret being a witness? It's, well, I think I do regret wasting so many years. I do regret spending so many years being controlled. But the worst thing is being controlled when I didn't realize I was being controlled. Because back then, if you said to me, you're being, and people did say to me that, you're being mind controlled, I would never accept that. I would not accept that. And that, for me, I look back, and that is the saddest thing, is being controlled but not realizing that I was. So do I regret being a Jehovah's Witness? I do regret that. I do regret being mind controlled to the point that I couldn't see it. And I do regret giving so much of my precious, valuable time, 20 years, to a concept, to somebody's concept and somebody's deluded imagination of dreaming up this God called Jehovah and this organization and all these ridiculous rules that destroyed people's lives. Yes, I do regret giving my time to that. But nothing, I'm a firm believer that nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted. And believe it or not, some of the skills that I learned as a Jehovah's Witness, going out, talking to people, talking to strangers, giving public presentations and public and well, not public talks, but out on the preaching work, conducting Bible studies, those skills in a strange sort of way has really helped me with my career, because it built my confidence in a way so that I could stand up in front of a TV camera in a studio and present. It's helped me to be able to coach other people, and it's also given me the confidence to be able to say, I could talk with an audience, and work with people, to stand up and teach and coach and train others. So in a strange sort of way, I did learn some skills being a Jehovah's Witness that has been valuable and helpful in my career that I've developed over the past 30 years. Would I ever go back to being a Jehovah's Witness? Never, 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 ever, ever. But in saying that, I do have a desire to, now that I've I feel really well decoded, although I still have some decoding to do, I believe. Um, I do have a desire to go back and put those ghosts to rest, to put the nail in the coffin and lay that ghost to rest. And for a long time now, I've felt that I want to just go back to the congregation and the Kingdom Hall and the meetings that I grew up in, and to sit there just to see it, observe it, and just to lay those ghosts to rest. Not, I don't want to go and make any trouble. I don't want to, say anything. I just want to go and just, release, just release my feelings, just within me. Yeah, and it's something I will do. It's something I will do now that I'm on the way to being fully decoded. It's something that I feel I need to do. I want to do it, and I've wanted to do that for a long time, just to go to look people in the eye, to look at people and think, and to say to myself, yes, you tried to control me. You could try to control my life for no other purpose than to feed your ego. Well, I'm free of you, and it's something I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go back, and when I do, I'll be taking my camera and my video and trying to record as much as I can, and I will upload it for you to see. So yeah, I mean, that's my journey. So there was nothing dramatic, no disfellowshipping, no reproving, no nothing like that. Pretty plain sailing, pretty boring. But I just felt that, I wanted to just share my story. So to everybody who watches this, if you are a Jehovah's Witness, please just stop and think about how the witnesses is controlling people, how they're damaging people, how they're hurting people, how they're killing people, and the damage that they've done already to so many people and their families. Please stop and think about this. If you have left the witnesses and are decoding and are waking up, then good on you. Please just continue to do that. I have a number of books that I've written, and not specifically about Jehovah's Witness, but just all about being uplifted, and building our strength up and realizing our worth. I will make those. They are and will shortly be available on Amazon. To anybody who feels that they have missed out on a career, go for it now. Just go for it. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. I never thought I would be an author of 8 books, have a following of amazing people that I support, coach, mentor, uplift and inspire. Never ever thought I would have that. So anything that you want, you can achieve. So guys, that's my story. I hope you found it useful. There is lots more to my story, lots of things I haven't shared, different little angles, that over time I will record and upload. So please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel, because there will be more videos coming about me escaping the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses, but just also about living life happy, and just little snippets to live your dreams. But to those activists, you're doing an amazing job. Please continue, because you're helping so many people. Stay tuned, like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.